Okay, we're back with chapter 3, biopsychology, and we're talking about Phineas Gage. How did I come to meet this man? Well, some years ago, the American Psychological Association, which every year I try to attend, this year they're not having one, I decided to go to Boston. I had never been to Boston before, and I knew that Phineas Gage was in that vicinity because he was supposed to be at Harvard's museum. So I went to the convention, and the last day on Sunday, I had some extra time. So I went to Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is where Harvard's campus is located. If you've ever been to Harvard's campus, let me tell you, you feel smarter walking around. It's exactly how I predicted it. Lots of ivy-covered old buildings. I found a museum, could not find Phineas, so I did which is very atypical for males. I actually stopped and asked for directions, asked for help. And they told me, oh, no, he's not here on this campus. He's at the Warren Museum, which is in Boston, where I just came from. So I got back on the subway, went back to my hotel room. It's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon right now. The museum closes at 5. I jump in a taxi and I asked the taxi driver, do you know where the Warren Museum is? And he says, no, man, but I have an idea. So picture this, being dropped off at a campus, not really having been there before, and there's just a ton of buildings and not knowing exactly where to go. So I'm running around. It's hot. It's August. Got a big camera around my neck, Peter Parker. And finally I find it. And as soon as they see me, they said, you have to show ID, you have to sign in, no photographs allowed. I said, okay, I'm not here to make trouble. I'm just here to not take a picture, but to meet and greet Phineas Gage. So they direct me to the second floor. And if you like biology or you like medicine, you would love this museum. Because at the Warren Museum, they have these glass cases filled with all kinds of old medical equipment. They have giant gallstones. That person probably didn't survive. And there, in a glass case, without much fanfare, is Phineas, right? His skull has tapping iron. So I stuck my hand out and I said, how are you? How do you do? And of course, he didn't shake my hand. So if you ever wound up in Boston and you stop by at the Warren Museum and you see Phineas, tell him I said, hey. So now you know the story of Phineas Gage. There's a couple videos on him, a couple recreation videos on Phineas Gage. More recent one and one that was probably made back in the 90s, perhaps. The one in the 90s actually is a little bit better than the more recent one, in my opinion. But I can't believe they haven't made a motion picture movie on this man, because I'm sure it would make a fascinating story. We started talking about the brain, and I brought a brain slice. This is not a slice of pizza. This is an actual slice of a brain, a very thin slice I borrowed from our psych lab. If you remember the biopsychological perspective, and one of the individuals I mentioned was Roger Speary, who worked on split brain patients. If you notice right around here, there's a little bit of white fiber there. That's the corpus callosum that would separate the two hemispheres. So you can see what our brain looks like, at least a slice of brain. Thank you, whoever the individual was that donated that. I hope they don't need it anymore. If you want to take a look at other brains, you can see these brains, and we have a variety of, we have a carp, a fish, we have a frog brain, we have a snake brain, we have a pigeon brain, and we have a rabbit brain. I hope it's not Bugs Bunny. So you can get a sense of what different brains look like. Our brain starts to formulate very early in our development in the womb. And here is just 3 weeks in utero, 11 weeks. And here we are at birth. And you notice at 11 weeks, the brain shape is kind of there, but it's missing the fissures, the wrinkles, right? And apparently, the more wrinkles, the better. If it was only like that with our faces. Right? Now, I like to joke around, as you know. And it'd be my luck if I saw somebody and I joke with them and said, "What's the matter? You got half a brain or something?" And the person answers yes. And here's a case study of an individual who literally lost half of their hemisphere. And that's just filled with fluid. And it's amazing if this happens early enough, due to plasticity, our brain is able to recuperate and kind of compensate for all the missing functions on the missing hemisphere. I'm not saying that it's at full capacity, but that's astounding. This chapter is amazing. It's all about the brain, right? I brain you. If that happens to me and I lose half my brain, I don't have the plasticity I once had when I was younger, so I'm not Wolverine. What skills are associated with the right and left hemispheres? Here's a collection of different skills. How do we know this? We know this through experimentation, through accidents, right? Through damage. We can see the deficits that are impacted. Is it possible for you to increase your brain power, right? Of course, you're doing it right now. You're in an institution of higher learning, and that increases your brain power. Some of you are forced to take classes that are requirements and you would never take in a million years. That's increasing your brain power, especially if you take something from that class. Use it, learn it, apply it. I know some classes you think, there's nothing here for me. But if you work hard enough, you can find something of value. Endorphins played a huge role in Phineas, right? Probably shooting when he first had that accident, he was still conscious. And we believe substance P also played a role in reducing the pain he was experiencing at the time. Eventually, of course, having a huge headache. He went in and out of a fever state for a couple of weeks. And once he started feeling better and being able to drink in some chicken broth, the doctor left him to attend some other patients. And of course, good old Phineas went out into the rain to get a brew to drink, and he wound up catching pneumonia, almost dying for the second time. Right? So our brain is a precious commodity. The way we see if there's any issues with our brain are through instruments like the EEG or the fMRI. Poor Phineas didn't have that ability to examine his brain in such form or fashion. Here's another way we can measure how the brain is responding to the EEG. Here is some brain imaging with different instruments. And that's just to see what is going on. What is going on? Why is there a deficit? Why are you having certain issues? This is exactly how Oliver Sacks found out with the man who mistook his wife for a hat. The occipital lobe was involved. They just speculated that the frontal lobe was involved because that's where the damage was for Phineas Gage, right? So each lobe has its functions, and honestly, I like to take care of my brain. Now, I'm not going to lie to you and say I always eat right and I'm always exercising, but I do one thing in particular. I don't take mind-altering substances when I can avoid them, because I don't want to re-scramble my brain neurotransmitters, because although I like scrambled eggs, I don't want to scramble my brain. I don't know if I can unscramble them if they're scrambled. A few more lobes and their functions. Right? The next thing I want to talk about is the central nervous system. That's composed of the brain and spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system, specifically the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems. Now, these words don't come up in conversation too much, sympathetic versus parasympathetic. But I want to talk about them because they're important to our survival, right? All right, so we're in a horror movie, and you see the character decide to take a shortcut through a dark, strange alley. Why did they do that? I don't know. As they're walking through, I have to warn you because I'm going to show a picture of a naked woman here, and I don't want anybody to be offended, so close your eyes for a minute. I'll tell you when I take it away. As the person gets stimulated, there's their brain and spinal cord, and there's their peripheral nervous system running through their entire body. I'm going to show you a fellow with partially clothed individual. He encounters a snake, so the sympathetic system kicks in. Heart rate increases, blood pressure increases, adrenaline's flowing, right? I'm sure Phineas Gage's sympathetic system was in high gear. But then, once he realizes that snake can't hurt him, his parasympathetic system kicks in. These systems are crucial. So as we're walking down that dark alley and somebody grabs us from behind, it's fight or flight, right? High energy. And then we turn around and see it's one of our friends playing a joke on us. Then we calm down. That's parasympathetic system. Right? Okay, so what I want to do is leave you with a comment about our glands. Let's talk about the size we become, right? Some of us are tall, some of us are small, some of us are wide, some of us are slim, right? Who here in the class has a fairly good size hand? Now my hand is probably just an average size hand. It looks kind of big when I go like that, but it's a pretty average size hand. If you have a pretty good size hand, go ahead and put it up to the screen because I want you to compare it with this individual. This hand in this article has not been blown up. This is the actual size hand of Leonard Studnik. I'll compare my hand to his hand, right? That's incredible. What's going on with Mr. Studnik? Here's a picture of him in his mother's living room, standing in the only room he feels comfortable standing in. Leonard Studnik, at the time of this article, who's from the Ukraine and was working as a veterinarian, age 34, when this article was published, stood 8'4" and weighed 440 pounds. Here he is in his village riding a horse-drawn wagon, which is not unusual, but he can't fit in the car at 8'4". He became the world's tallest man, probably because he had some issues with his pituitary gland. Now, at 8'4", he lost his championship to, this is a former student's mom, this former student sent this picture, to Sultan Kozin, who stood 8'3". Now you may be asking yourself, well, why is he shorter and he gets the world championship? Because Leonid Studnik refused to get measured anymore. He said it wasn't bringing him fame or fortune or even a girlfriend. So Sultan Kozin is now the world's tallest man. Leonid Studnik has actually gotten taller, and so has Sultan, but unofficially, Leonid Studnik is still the most tallest man, but not the tallest. That belonged to Robert Wadlow, who died at age 22, very young, at 8'11". Here he is next to his father, who's 5'11", which is pretty tall for the time period. But 8'11.1", Robert Wadlow, who is described as a pretty shy individual. Now, questions, here they are. Tell me everything you know about Phineas Gage, and tell me about the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems. You can do wonders with those questions because you know Phineas Gage's story by heart. Thank you. See you for Chapter 4.